Where exactly does a life of pleasure lead to? Is it wrong to be constantly in the need and chase of pleasure? Now, certainly, if it makes you feel good, how can it be bad for you then? Well, that's exactly the topic of today's video. And when I say pleasure, more specifically, I'm talking about instant gratification versus the opposite of that, which is delayed gratification. I'll be leading with three examples. First example being me as a young kid and my love for sugary sweets and having a sweet tooth. Leading with the example of someone in their 20s who is chasing women and the hookup culture. Then ending with a more personal example that has been involved in my life, which is drug addiction. Growing up, and still to this day, I have a sweet tooth. And see, the thing is, when you're a kid, you lack the experience and the knowledge to know necessarily consequences. And so, you might be in search of things that make you feel good instantly, right in the moment. And sweets and candy is one of those examples for me. I was always that friend that, that one friend that you have when you go to their house, but for whatever reason, they have the best snacks. Especially growing up in a house like mine, I didn't have much snacks or candy or junk food around often. So going to this friend's house, it's like they got the best shit. It's like their parents bought the whole candy junk food aisle. And so to a young kid, it is heaven on earth. So, you might overindulge in these things. You might eat the whole box, maybe two. And in the moment, it feels wonderful because you are riding that sugar rush. You're riding that candy high. And so, like I said, you don't think about the consequences and how you're going to feel maybe later on. Or maybe how this is going to ruin your appetite. Because all you care about right then and there is that pleasure. Or, maybe how it's going to affect your acne. Because growing up, I definitely struggled with acne. Or more importantly, maybe even cavities. I've had so many cavities growing up. I used to have 6 silver caps on my teeth at one point. And I actually went to the dentist recently. First time in like 7 years, my bad. And I got 3 cavities I got to take care of. But now, as an adult, I no longer have those things covered or paid for. I'm paying them for myself out of pocket. And I don't have any dental insurance. So, yeah, it's going to be pricey. And so this is a perfect example of short-term versus long-term, how chasing pleasure and where it can lead you to. In the moment, you're just thinking about those savory sweets that are just going down and they taste so good while they're in your mouth. But now, as a 20-something-year-old who has to pay his own bills, I'm like, damn, I'm going to have to dish out, I think they said it's like $200 roughly per cavity, and I got 3 of them, so you can do the math. And with the example of this candy and sweet tooth, it's high versus happiness. In the moment, it's the high, eating all that candy, the rush, having toothaches because you ate too much, or stomach aches and feeling like shit for the rest of the day. That's not happiness. It's not fun. Having to pay a lot of money due to your own consequences of having a sweet tooth is also not very happy. And so you can see the differentiation between high and a happiness. A high is instant. Happiness is more of a delayed long-term. Once again, short-term versus long-term. We all may know some guys who they love hooking up. They love going to the bar, the club, and pulling a different girl every single night. It makes them feel good. They get a high off of that. That's the short term. But the next day, they may wake up they might look over and they may kind of regret exactly what they did. But in the moment, they weren't worried about that. They were chasing that high. They might even realize maybe I've lowered my standards here and there a couple nights just to get that high. And then while they're leaving in a rush the next morning because they don't want to have breakfast with this person, let alone really care anything to do with them, they are technically in the same situation they started in. Alone, maybe they feel lonely, and maybe they feel the urge to need to do it again. And you can see how it's just a never-ending cycle. The high is what leads us, but then we realize that where exactly did it lead us? It might lead us to a place we don't want. And, you know, I've heard from a lot of people that have had this type of lifestyle in their 20s, it's very lonely. And they have this hole in their heart that they think sleeping with so-and-so or X amount of people will fill that gap. But in doing so, they end up in the exact same place that they started and realize that's not the case. And so short term, yeah, it feels good. They get their nut off. But then long term, it's like, oh wait, where is this leading me to? What am I doing? I still feel the same way after every encounter, so obviously it's not working. And if you just focus on that short term instant gratification high, maybe you can be at the end of your 20s, realize you've wasted all of your 20s chasing women or this constant high rather than a balance or being more productive or focusing on other aspects of life. And, you know, maybe building an actual relationship and connection before seeking to sleep with someone, and not having to lower your standards for the night, and actually maybe being excited to spend the next day with them rather than rushing off. We've talked about highs versus happiness, instant gratification versus delayed gratification. Another thing that works well with this topic is purpose over pleasure. So, I mean, maybe your purpose isn't to get in a relationship. That's not necessarily what you need or want right now. So, you know, you're just seeking that pleasure. But like I said, there may be long-term consequences that you may not realize in the moment. Like I said, looking back in your 20s and realizing I've wasted them chasing pleasure due to a lack of purpose. The last example I'm going to give is drug addiction. Now, it's not me personally, but one of my parents, my father, is a drug addict. And he's been that way as long as I can remember. Obviously, for a drug addict, they are in a constant search of pleasure. They want nothing but to get high all the time. And as soon as that fades, as soon as that light dims, they're on seeking for the next pleasure hit, the next dopamine hit, the next high. And personally in my life, having my father be like that, I've seen the road it's led him down. And so this is exactly what I mean by talking about where can pleasure, a life of constantly chasing pleasure, lead you? And you know, it's not pretty. My dad, majority of his life is the kids weren't there. He knows my mom was a great woman, but due to his pleasure seeking, his addiction, his constant need to always be high, he messed that up. And who knows what life could have been for him if he got his stuff together and didn't always chase that pleasure. And this is where, you know, purpose over your pleasure can come in. If you realize, you know, I got kids, I want to be in their life, or I got something good going for me, I can't mess this up. You have to let purpose take the lead and replace that constant urge for pleasure seeking. Because we can see how quickly that can ruin your life and just exactly where it can lead you to. In the moment, pleasure feels amazing. But long term, it's not actual happiness. It's a quick rush, a quick feeling. And if we just constantly chase that, we won't have anything to show for it. We won't have big goals and ambitions. Okay, something I'm gonna talk about is I've been on my own fitness journey and working out now for a couple of months. And to be honest, I know some people enjoy working out, but I honestly do not. While I'm working out, I'm like, oh, there's so much other stuff I'd rather be doing. This really ain't that fun. But it's the feeling and the results after the workout that is why I do it. Whether it's the health results, whether it's the physical results, liking the way you look naked in the mirror, it's the confident boost that it can give you. But all those come after the fact, where if I was constantly seeking pleasure, I would never work out. Because why would I work out if I could just get high, smoke some weed? Why would I work out if I can just play some video games? And this can be said about a lot of things. If you're constantly in search of pleasure, why would you set to accomplish great goals, difficult things? Like working out is difficult. It doesn't feel good while it's happening. You struggle. And, pleasure is the opposite. Why would you want to struggle? Why would you want to do something uncomfortable, something you maybe don't even like, when you can just be numb through pleasure seeking? Going day by day, doing only what makes you feel good. Not thinking about long term. No, I can put that off. I don't need to do this. I don't got to make more money. I don't got to get more fit. I don't need to get smarter, be smarter, start a business. I don't need to work on my relationships with my friends. Why? Because these things give me pleasure in the moment, and I'm just going to constantly live for this pleasure rather than seeking true, everlasting happiness that comes with, maybe the uncomfortable stuff, the stuff you don't want to do. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is my 2 cents on just pleasure and where it can lead you and the consequences that come with it. So just end the video. Remember, instant gratification versus delayed, short-term pleasure versus long-term pleasure, highs versus happiness, and living in purpose over pleasure. Thank you, guys.